What's up guys, Kavika here with 9th App Studio, and today I wanted to give you my predictions on what I think we're going to see in the A7s Mark III. So right now, as I'm recording this, we got NAB 2018 going on in Vegas, and Sony just announced their new FS5 Mark II. Now it does have better raw output options, and they say it has better color science. There's a few other things, but mostly it's the same as the original FS5. And a lot of filmmakers are asking the question like, is that really enough to release a whole new camera? And Sony does have this history of making these almost incremental upgrades at a really fast pace. I mean, they released the A6500 just 8 months after the A6300 with just a handful of upgrades. But I don't think that's going to be the case with the A7s Mark III. I actually think we're going to see a significant improvement over the previous generation. Now first off, the A7s Mark II was released in 2015, which means that Sony has about 2.5 years of R&D under their belt. And we've already seen some pretty awesome improvements like screen resolution, button layout, body design, battery life. These are all pretty significant improvements that we first saw with the A9, then the A7R Mark III, which I'm shooting with right now, and then the newer A7 Mark III. And I'm guessing that the A7s Mark III is going to get a similar makeover. I also think it's pretty safe to say that it's going to inherit Sony's new autofocus technology. Okay, now let's get into what I think you guys are most interested in, video specs. I think the A7s Mark III is going to have a pretty significant improvement when it comes to recording options. And to explain to you why, let's take a look at the A7 Mark III and the A7R Mark III. Now with both of these third generation cameras, you now have a UHS-2 card slot. You used to only have a UHS-1, which the max write speeds that I saw were maybe 100 megabytes per second. But now I'm seeing these UHS-2 cards and they're writing almost 300 megabytes per second. The A7 III and the A7R III both take advantage of this, and they give you really fast burst modes and pretty high buffer limits. I mean, you can shoot 10 frames per second raw on both of them for like 4 or 5 seconds. And that makes sense because the A7 and the A7R series are really targeted at photographers, or at the most hybrid shooters, the guys who shoot photos and video. The A7S, on the other hand, is really built for video. And yeah, it takes great photos, especially in low light, but don't kid yourself, the A7S is a video camera. Now, if you take a look at the video specs of the A7 III and the A7R III, the highest recording bit rate that you can get is still only 100 megabytes per second. And I can almost guarantee that the A7s Mark III is going to have a UHS-2 card slot, which means that they still have a ton of room to give you higher recording bit rates. But what does that mean spec-wise? Well, I think there's a pretty good chance that we're going to get 10-bit color depth. I mean, one of the biggest complaints is with S-Log3. What it does is it reduces your contrast a bunch, so you get a huge amount of dynamic range. But once you color correct it, because it's only 8-bit, you end up getting a bunch of banding instead of a smooth gradient. And it's a perfect opportunity for Sony to solve that with 10-bit. Some other things we might see are faster frame rates at higher resolutions. Maybe 60 frames per second at 4K. Maybe 240 frames per second in HD. And while I'm dreaming, I guess it's not impossible for us to see better chroma sampling. Maybe we'll see 422 instead of 420. But whatever the case is, you can see how it's pretty reasonable for us to expect a significant increase in video specs because it'll be able to use these faster cards. Now these are just my individual speculations. I don't have like any inside information, and obviously I could be completely wrong. But if you guys have questions, or even if you guys disagree with me, I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments below. In the end, only time will tell what we're gonna see in the A7s Mark III. You guys, thanks for watching. Again, I'm Kavika with 9th App Studio, and I will see you guys in the next video. Shoots!